Sarah Chen's heels clicked against the cobblestone path as she guided her Mercedes into the upscale Riverside Park parking area. The late afternoon sun filtered through ancient oak trees, casting dancing shadows across manicured lawns where families gathered on checker blankets. She glanced in the rearview mirror at 6-year-old Emma, buckled silently in her car seat, clutching a worn stuffed elephant. Another session with Dr. Wells had ended the same way they all did. Emma sitting motionless in the oversized leather chair, dark eyes absorbing everything while her lips remained sealed. 3 months since the divorce finalized, and still not a single word from her daughter. Sarah's phone buzzed insistently against the dashboard. The quarterly board meeting prep materials needed review before tomorrow's presentation. She should be at the office, not chasing fairy tales about fresh air and playground therapy healing childhood trauma. Emma's car door opened with a gentle click. The little girl slipped out, elephant tucked under one arm, and walked toward the playground without looking back. Her small frame moved with careful precision, avoiding puddles and staying clear of other children's chaotic games. Before we continue this touching story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've seen similar struggles with children in your area. Sarah followed at a distance, watching Emma settle on an empty swing. The child's feet barely touched the ground, but she made no attempt to push herself into motion. Instead, she observed the world around her with the intensity of someone much older. Across the park near the Rose Garden, Marcus Rodriguez knelt beside a bed of freshly planted marigolds, his weathered hands gentle as he adjusted the soil around delicate stems. The afternoon sun warmed his shoulders through his park maintenance uniform, a simple green shirt that bore grass stains from honest work. 80-year-old Tyler sat cross-legged nearby, homework spread across a small blanket, occasionally glancing up to watch his father work. The boy had learned to be content in quiet spaces, understanding that some days required patience and soft voices. "Marcus, watch this one," Tyler said, pointing to a wilting flower. Marcus moved closer, examining the drooping petals with the same careful attention he once gave to patient files in military hospitals. "Sometimes they just need extra water and time to heal," he replied, reaching for his watering can. Other parents steered their children away from the maintenance area, viewing Marcus as part of the landscape rather than a person. Their designer jogging outfits and expensive strollers created an invisible barrier between their world and his. He had grown accustomed to being overlooked, finding peace in the honest work of nurturing growing things. The spring breeze carried the scent of jasmine and fresh mulch. Marcus stood slowly, surveying the garden beds with quiet satisfaction. Each plant had been chosen carefully, positioned to create harmony and beauty for families who would pass by without noticing the thoughtful planning behind their moment of peace. Tyler packed his books as the afternoon light began to fade, ready to walk home with his father through streets where they belonged to each other, if nowhere else. Emma's small fingers traced the metal chains of her swing as she watched a butterfly land on nearby purple petunias. The garden area called to her with its riot of colors and sweet fragrances, so different from the sterile white walls of Dr. Wells' office. She slipped from the swing and wandered toward the flower beds, her stuffed elephant dragging slightly behind her. The man in the green shirt was kneeling among the roses, his movements slow and purposeful. Unlike the adults who spoke too loudly and asked too many questions, he worked in comfortable silence. Marcus noticed the little girl approaching but continued his task, sensing her need for space. He had learned in his former life that healing often required patience above all else. Emma stopped at the garden's edge, her dark eyes studying the careful arrangement of blooms. "These are called snapdragons," Marcus said quietly, not looking directly at her. "If you squeeze them gently, they open their mouths like tiny dragons." He demonstrated with one yellow flower, making it appear to speak. Emma stepped closer, fascinated by the simple magic. The child reached out tentatively, touching a soft petal with the tip of one finger. Marcus continued his work, allowing her to explore at her own pace. Tyler looked up from his books and smiled at the silent girl, understanding something about quiet spaces and the safety they provided. Emma knelt beside a patch of white daisies, still clutching her elephant. For the first time in months, her shoulders relaxed as she discovered a world where words weren't necessary to communicate wonder. Sarah's conference call ended abruptly when she realized Emma was no longer on the swing. Panic flashed through her chest as she scanned the playground, her eyes finally locating her daughter near the maintenance area with a strange man in work clothes. "Excuse me, what are you doing with my daughter?" Sarah called sharply, her heels clicking rapidly across the grass. Her protective instincts overrode any consideration of politeness as she approached the garden where Emma knelt beside the groundskeeper. Marcus looked up calmly, his hands still dirty from planting. "She was just looking at the flowers, ma'am." "I'm Marcus, the park gardener." He gestured toward Tyler, who had gathered his books and moved closer to his father. "This is my son, Tyler." Emma glanced between her mother and Marcus, sensing the tension but reluctant to leave the peaceful garden space. Sarah's business training kicked in as she assessed the situation, noting the man's respectful demeanor and the presence of his own child. "I didn't realize someone was watching her," Sarah said, her voice softening slightly. "She's been having a difficult time lately." Marcus nodded with understanding, making no move toward Emma, but allowing the child to choose her own comfort level. "The flowers don't ask questions," Marcus said gently. "Sometimes that's exactly what we need." Sarah studied his weathered face, surprised by the wisdom in his simple words. Emma remained by the daisies, caught between two worlds, but finding unexpected safety in the presence of this quiet stranger who seemed to understand silence. 3 weeks passed with Emma returning to the garden each afternoon while Sarah worked on her phone nearby. The little girl had claimed a small corner beside the lavender bushes, where Marcus had quietly cleared a space just her size. Today he knelt beside her with a tiny watering can painted bright yellow. "This one's just for you," he said, placing it within her reach. "The plant in your section will depend on you to keep them healthy." Emma's eyes widened as she touched the smooth handle, understanding the gift of responsibility and trust. Tyler had finished his homework early and sat drawing pictures in his sketchbook, occasionally showing Emma his artwork of butterflies and flowers. The two children communicated through shared glances and gentle gestures, creating a friendship that required no words. Marcus demonstrated how to water each plant carefully, showing Emma which ones needed more moisture and which prefer to stay drier. "Your touch will tell you what they need," he explained, guiding her small hands as she learned to read the soil's condition. Sarah watched from her bench, noting how Emma's posture had changed over these visits. Her daughter's shoulders no longer hunched defensively, and her breathing seemed deeper, more relaxed. The expensive therapy sessions had produced charts and clinical observations, but this simple garden work was creating something different entirely. Emma picked up her watering can and moved methodically through her small plot, her elephant tucked safely beside a growing patch of baby sunflowers that Marcus had helped her plant. Sarah found herself arriving earlier each day, ostensibly to give Emma more garden time, but increasingly drawn to observe Marcus's remarkable patience with children. She watched him explain the difference between annual and perennial flowers to a group of curious toddlers, his voice steady and warm. The way he spoke reminded her of someone, though she couldn't place the memory. His vocabulary seemed more extensive than she'd expect from a maintenance worker, and his understanding of child development appeared almost professional. Emma had begun showing Marcus small drawings she made at home, sketches of flowers and butterflies that he received with genuine appreciation. He would study each one carefully, pointing out details that showed her growing observation skills. "You see how the petals curve here?" Marcus said, examining Emma's latest drawing of a rose. "That's exactly how they grow toward the sunlight." Emma nodded solemnly, pleased that her artwork captured something true about the living world. Sarah noticed other changes too. Emma ate her lunch more readily when they brought sandwiches to eat near the garden. Her nightmares had decreased, and she seemed more present during their quiet moments at home. Dr. Wells had mentioned in their last session that breakthrough moments often came unexpectedly, through connections that traditional therapy couldn't manufacture. Sarah began to wonder if Emma's healing was happening not in a clinical office, but here among the roses and marigolds, guided by a man whose qualifications extended far beyond his humble uniform. The afternoon calm shattered when 3 older boys began taunting a younger child near the playground equipment. Their voices carried harsh words about the boys' worn sneakers and secondhand clothes, drawing worried glances from nearby parents who seemed uncertain how to intervene. Emma froze beside her sunflowers, clutching her watering can as the bullying escalated. The targeted child began crying, his shoulders shaking with each cruel comment. Tyler looked toward his father with wide, concerned eyes. Marcus set down his pruning shears and walked steadily toward the commotion. His movements held quiet authority, each step deliberate and controlled. The transformation in his bearing was subtle but unmistakable, revealing glimpses of military training beneath his gardener's exterior. "That's enough," Marcus said, his voice carrying a command presence that immediately caught the bully's attention. The playground fell silent as parents turned to watch this unexpected intervention. "You boys need to apologize and find something better to do with your time." The older children tried to argue, but something in Marcus's calm, unwavering gaze made them reconsider. Without raising his voice or making threats, he had established complete control of the situation through sheer presence and moral authority. After the bullies reluctantly apologized and wandered away, Marcus knelt beside the crying child, offering quiet comfort and helping him find his parents. Sarah watched this display of natural leadership, realizing there were depths to this man that his humble job couldn't begin to reveal. The next afternoon, Sarah approached Marcus as he tended the herb garden while Emma and Tyler played quietly nearby. "I wanted to thank you for yesterday," she said, her voice carrying genuine appreciation. "The way you handled that situation was remarkable." Marcus looked up from the basil plants, his hands still dirty from honest work. "Children need to feel safe before they can learn or heal," he replied simply. "It's something I learned a long time ago." Sarah studied his weathered face, noting the intelligence in his eyes that seemed inconsistent with his current position. "If you don't mind me asking, have you worked with children before? Your approach seems very professional." Marcus paused his gardening, considering how much to share. "I used to be a speech therapist in the Army," he said quietly. "Worked with soldiers who had lost their ability to communicate after trauma. Children aren't so different from combat veterans sometimes." The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. A speech therapist. Here she'd been paying Dr. Wells hundreds of dollars per session, while a qualified professional had been patiently working with Emma for free among the flowers. "Emma has selective mutism," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Since the divorce, she hasn't spoken a word. 3 months of therapy with no progress." Marcus nodded with understanding, watching Emma carefully water her sunflowers with the concentration of someone finding peace in simple tasks. "Trauma steals voices in different ways," Marcus said gently. "Sometimes traditional therapy isn't enough. Sometimes healing happens through trust and time." Marcus had spent the morning preparing something special. He gathered Emma, Tyler, and several other children who frequented the garden into a small circle near the butterfly bushes. "Today we're going to plant friendship flowers," he announced, holding up packets of cosmos seeds. Each child received their own small pot and a handful of seeds. "These flowers will grow together, just like friendships do," Marcus explained, his voice gentle but engaging. "When we plant them together, we're promising to help each other grow." Emma clutched her seeds tightly, watching as Marcus demonstrated how to make small holes in the soil. The ritual felt sacred somehow, different from their usual quiet gardening. Tyler sat beside her, offering encouragement through smiles and gentle gestures. As each child planted their seeds, Marcus asked them to make a wish for their flowers. Some children spoke their wishes aloud, while others whispered or simply thought quietly. Emma closed her eyes, holding her seeds against her heart before placing them carefully in the earth. The group formed a circle around the planted pots, and Marcus began to speak about how flowers need sunlight, water, and care to grow, just like children need love and patience. His words carried deeper meaning, creating a safe space where vulnerability felt natural. Other children began sharing small thoughts about their own gardens at home, their voices mixing with the afternoon breeze. Emma listened intently, her breathing calm and steady. For the first time in months, she felt part of something larger than her own silence. The friendship flowers had been growing for a week when Emma noticed one of her cosmos seedlings looked wilted compared to the others. She knelt beside the small pot, her brow furrowed with concern as she touched the drooping leaves with gentle fingers. Marcus approached quietly, sensing her distress. He settled beside her in the soft earth, examining the struggling plant with the same careful attention he gave all living things. "Sometimes plants get hurt and need extra care to heal," he said softly. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she stared at the fragile seedling. The sight of something beautiful and vulnerable struggling to survive seemed to mirror her own journey through recent months of pain and silence. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice barely audible like a flower petal caught on the wind. "Can flowers grow back after they're hurt?" The words hung in the air between them, the first sound she had made in months breaking the carefully maintained silence. Marcus felt his heart pause, understanding the profound trust she had just offered. "Yes, Emma," he replied gently, his voice steady despite the emotion rising in his chest. "With patience and love, they can grow even stronger than before." Emma reached for her tiny watering can, her movements deliberate and hopeful. As she carefully tended the struggling plant, her lips moved in silent promises of care and protection. The breakthrough had come not through clinical intervention, but through the simple act of nurturing something fragile back to life. Sarah had been watching from her usual bench when she heard the impossible sound floating across the garden. Emma's voice, soft as morning dew, speaking to Marcus about the wounded flower. The words hit Sarah with overwhelming force, bringing tears to her eyes as months of worry and helplessness finally broke open. She approached slowly, afraid that any sudden movement might shatter this fragile moment. Emma looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed brighter, more present than they had been since the divorce proceedings began. "Mommy, look," Emma said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "Marcus showed me how to help the flower feel better." The little cosmos had already begun to perk up under her careful attention, its leaves reaching toward the afternoon sunlight. Sarah knelt beside her daughter, her expensive suit forgotten as she touched the rich earth with trembling fingers. "I can see that, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're taking such good care of it." Marcus stood respectfully nearby, understanding that this moment belonged to mother and daughter. His quiet presence had created the space for healing, but now he stepped back to allow their reconnection to unfold naturally. Emma continued chattering softly about her flowers, her words tumbling out like water from a spring that had finally found its way to the surface. 3 months of silence dissolved in the garden air as Sarah listened to the voice she thought she might never hear again, grateful beyond measure for the groundskeeper who had given her daughter back her words. 2 weeks later, Sarah returned to the park with a proposal that had kept her awake for nights. Emma ran ahead to check on her friendship flowers, chattering excitedly to Tyler about the new buds that were forming. Marcus was pruning the rose bushes when Sarah approached, her business confidence tempered with genuine respect. "I've been thinking about what you said regarding children needing to feel safe before they can heal," she began. "My company's foundation is looking for someone to develop child therapy programs." Marcus looked up from his work, surprised by the unexpected offer. Sarah continued, her voice gaining momentum. "We could reach hundreds of children who need exactly what you gave, Emma. Your approach, your understanding of trauma, it's exactly what's missing from traditional therapy." Emma bounded over, her voice bright as she showed them a butterfly that had landed on her cosmos. "Look, Marcus," she said excitedly. "The flowers really do attract butterflies like you promised." Her transformation was complete, the silent, withdrawn child replaced by someone eager to share her discoveries. Marcus smiled, watching the little girl who had taught him as much about healing as he had taught her. "Sometimes the best therapy happens in gardens instead of offices," he said quietly. Sarah nodded, understanding that she was offering him more than a job, but a chance to share his gift with children who desperately needed his patient wisdom. If this story moved you, please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed someone with hidden talents helping others in unexpected ways? The friendship flowers bloomed in brilliant colors, proof that with proper care, beautiful things could grow from the smallest seeds of hope.